Can I start now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, good afternoon. It's really great to have many of you here with us today, and we are also waiting for some more colleagues to join us. So very welcome to the Circular Grassroots webinar series. This is a series of 4 webinars where we share and discuss results from the Circular Grassroots project and beyond. The project brings together colleagues from the University of Barcelona, Autonomous of Barcelona, Amsterdam, Nantes, Le Mans, and Gothenburg, and it is funded by the Driving Urban Transitions program. Across these 4 webinars, we have focused on the metabolic contributions of grassroots initiatives in the first webinar, environmental conflicts and contestation in the second one, today's theme, which is value creation beyond monetary valuation, and governance regimes of spaces for just post-growth cities, which will be the 4th one, the 21st of March. My name is Maria Jose Zapata Campos. I am Professor of Management and Organization at the University of Gothenburg, and I will be moderating today's webinar, which has the title, What Gets Valued? Circular Grassroots Beyond Monetary Value. And I think most of us in the room are familiar with grassroots initiatives such as food sharing networks, repair movements, libraries of things, community kitchens. And I think we are here because we understand they have a crucial role in advancing more just urban transformations. Research of also many people here in the room shows how beyond their environmental contributions, including waste reduction, reuse, lowering emissions, these initiatives generate forms of value that are central to the urban fabric. However, they are hidden to policymakers and the general public. They strengthen social capital, build agency and empowerment, they foster skills, knowledge, cultivate care, well-being, creativity, and more, as we will see today. So the question guiding us is what kinds of value do these initiatives create, and what happens when we try to measure them only in monetary terms? So let me say a few words about our starting point, which is how these initiatives constitute alternative economies that contribute not only to material production, but also to the reproduction of society through caring practices, maintenance, mutual aid, and collective learning. However, their value is often undermined or rendered invisible. So, and if we think of the economy as an iceberg, like following the metaphor developed by Gibson, Graham, and colleagues, only the visible tip, the formal monetized economy, is counted and recognized. But beneath the surface lies a vast terrain of unpaid, informal, caring, repairing, sustaining activities. So circular grassroots initiatives operate largely in that submerged part of the iceberg. That's what we're going to talk about today. And research shows that these initiatives generate a plurality of values that cannot be reduced to quantified environmental outputs, cost efficiency, monetary valuation. A diverse economics perspective shifts the spotlight away from techno-managerial and growth-centered framings of circularity, and instead circularity becomes about mobilizing a plurality of values and creating spaces for socio-ecological transformations. This challenges what our colleague, for example, Federico Savini, calls the dominant value frame of circularity, one centered on economic growth, market-led innovation, and individual consumer responsibility. And instead, circular degrowth practices redirect circularity from individual consumption to collective responsibilities, from placeless systems to practices grounded in territories, and from commodification to reclaiming use value over exchange value. So in our first seminar, we discussed metabolic contributions, and our colleagues here in the room, Claudio Cattaneo and Jean-Baptiste Barres, have brought up in an article that will be published soon, the concept of subsistence circularities, constituted by groups as informal recyclers or food gleaners, primarily or initially involved in these activities because of their livelihood needs, showing how, despite their precarity, they often have enormous material impact. In some cases, for example, recyclers in the city of Barcelona, up to 1/3 of the metals collected in the city, or significant shares of rescue food in cities like Nantes or Gothenburg. So their efficiency is also remarkable, although at times symbolic. But today we move beyond impact metrics And because the question is not only how much material they recover, but what kinds of social, political, and ethical transformations are enacted in the process. So political philosopher Michael Sandel reminds us to ask what happens when markets touch things, what values are crowded out. When we reduce social practices to monetary metrics, something is often lost. Ecological economist John Martinez Allier reminds us that values are incommensurable. They cannot be all translated into money. But incommensurability does not mean incomparability. It calls for multi-criteria, multi-methods evaluation, for recognizing that livelihood values, sacredness, intergenerational justice, and ecological regeneration require different valuation languages. So this is the broader conversation we invite today. And with this framing, I am very pleased to introduce our two speakers. First, we have Ulrika Holmberg, who from a critical consumption studies perspective, inspired by practice theory and notions of affordances, will contextualize different initiatives in Gothenburg, showing how they generate distinct but overlapping forms of value. And Ulrika, she is Associate Professor at the School of Business, Economics and Law at the University of Gothenburg and Deputy Director of the Center for Consumption Research. And then thereafter, we have Blanca Cayenne, drawing from Science and Technology Studies and Design Research, who will take us into repair communities and libraries of things in Barcelona, exploring how repair opens black boxes, reshapes relations to technology, and enacts ecologies of care. And Blanca is Associate Professor at the Department of Social Psychology at Autonomous University of Barcelona and one of the co-founders of the repair movement in Barcelona. And after their presentations, we will move into a panel discussion with our invited discussants, with Bruno Chies, who is an activist from the Solidarity Fridge in Sweden, Claudio Cattaneo, researcher at the University of Barcelona, and Dinea Guinea, politician from the Green Party at the City of Gothenburg. And then, of course, we open the floor for questions for all of you. So please feel free to use the chat and we'll try to keep an eye on it. So let us begin by asking not only how circular these initiatives are, but what worlds they are helping to value and bring into being. So Ulrika, with this long introduction, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Maria. So I will go through some of the findings from a survey done here in Gothenburg last spring, early summer. And we have been looking at some of the types of initiatives that Maria just talked about. So we have looked at the People's Kitchen, Community Kitchen, and a toy library, and then the Solidarity Fridge, and another space which is called Fixoteket, encouraging repair, share, swap, and creating. So this creative space. So almost 300 participants answered the survey, and all these initiatives that we have looked at are collectively organized. Along the lines of degrowth, circularity, and circular grassroots definitions. It was a self-administered survey, and it was distributed at different types of events, meetings, and via newsletters. So a lot of different people answered it, and they represent these 4 initiatives. So we will look more closely at some of the findings. So at first we will look at some reasons to join. So we asked them to give us a little short explanations of why they were at the meeting or whatever initiative they were visiting at the moment. So in general, most of them highlighted the environment, and on second place it was economic reasons like saving money, and a lot of them highlighted proximity, they work or live close by, and also social aspects like meeting people. But if we look at the different initiatives, they prioritize a bit differently. And when we ask them more freely to list several aspects, the differences between the initiatives was not that clear, but when we asked them to list just one, then we could see that in the Solidarity Fridge, the movement, the saving food waste, it was mostly economic reasons. And for the toy library, it was environmental reasons. And for this creative space, Fixoteket, it was proximity. And for the People's Kitchen, it was the social aspects of meeting people. So in general, this is both in our own previous research and in others, this mix of different rationales. So for example, the social, economic and environmental rationales, it increases the capacity to recruit people to the initiative and also by time to sustain participation. So no matter what started you to visit this initiative, if there are more reasons to be there, you will stay longer. So we often talk about these flexible identities. You start identifying with an initiative in one corner and then you discover a lot of more. So this is something we will come back to. So it's an important part of the initiatives. So it's important to recognize that they each support different types of values. And if we look a bit on the different types of participants, some are newcomers and some are involved much more. They have been there for a long time. They might even come to be volunteers helping out with the initiative. And then we see some interesting things that visitors and those who are a little less involved, they highlight some motivations, but those who are more involved as volunteers and the group that we call super volunteers who really spend many hours a week to support this initiative, they highlight other types of things like more social dimensions. So you might start with an initiative helping yourself more or less, but as time goes by you find nice friends there and that's why you continue to be there. And we also see some differences between the initiatives here. So for the People's Kitchen and the Solidarity Fridge, they seem to attract many volunteers and also these super volunteers. So yeah, as you engage and are more committed, you tend to highlight more social values and more collective values. A brief look at who's there. If we look at the socioeconomic conditions among the participants, we can see that among all the participants, they tend, if we look at the group as a whole, they tend to be in the lower income categories compared to the city of Gothenburg as a whole. And the main source of income is less often work than for the population in general. And we also see that there are more women than men attracted by these initiatives. But there are also interesting differences between these initiatives. So the toy library tend to attract more middle-class people, and Solidarity Fridge, a lot of low income people with low incomes. It's a way to find nice food besides saving the environment. And at the Fixoteket, the creative space, they attract most immigrants, especially from outside the European Union. But they also have the most even socioeconomic mix in terms of incomes. And they're situated in the suburbs of Gothenburg. And then we have the People's Kitchen, who seem to attract people a bit more evenly. And as I mentioned, it's more women than men, but in the people going to the People's Kitchen, eating together, cooking together, they tend to be a more even mix between women and men. And if we switch to what values that are generated, we see that there are a lot of different possibilities that these initiatives can contribute to different types of values. So we, in this survey, we had a long list of possible effects. So we asked, to which degree has this initiative helped you to? So it was a kind of translation of values to graspable statements, such as meet people more often and things like that. So when we group this long list of approximately 30 different questions into different categories, we can see that well-being is one important thing, and the differences between these initiatives are apparent for some dimensions and less apparent for others. So we see also the personal development, like creativity and things, invigorating yourself in different ways is also something that is quite important, but also like the shared meals creates this strong sense of meaning and purpose and well-being, because it really builds on being there together with others. So you see there are some different profiles, but they also interestingly all providing with this feeling of agency, that you can really do something, which is really an important part of these initiatives. So what we would like to highlight is that some of the nice effects of the active engagement. So you start visiting these initiatives, and eventually you might turn into a volunteer and work there. So this creates this strong sense of agency and contribution to the environment. It also highlights that you feel an enhanced social capital, new connections and a sense of community. The deeper environmental knowledge and also increased environmental awareness is also a very positive value that is created. And personal growth and a clearer sense of purpose, and also limited so the least effect, but still an important thing, is that it still has an impact on sharing practices. So these strong feelings of agency are among the most important things, and we would also like to highlight, among all these positive effects that we see, there are still some tricky things, and that is access to space. So both from the initiatives organizations, but also among the participants, there is a clear disappointment regarding the space aspect. So on the questions, if there is enough space for this type of initiatives in some different aspects of the question, this was graded quite low compared to the other values that these initiatives can support. So wrapping it all up and pointing to two things that might be also into the discussion is how this positive effect of bringing heterogeneous groups together and being really reinforcing different rationales when we mix people with different views and interests, it also creates tensions. So it requires a lot of work to handle these tensions. But in the end, if you succeed, you have a much more stable initiative that can contribute to more values. And we would also like to highlight this concept of effective affordances and how different initiatives enable different practices, values, and effects. So looking at the collective of initiatives. So that was a quick review of our survey.
Thank you very much, Ulrika, for also keeping the time for the presentation. It's not easy to try to say things into 10 minutes. And now I'm going to give the word to Blanca. If, you would like to probably share the screen.
Yeah.
And then I can also continue saying that I think it's great, Ulrika, that you ended up with this, how the materialities and the spaces of the different initiatives can afford different practices and different values. This is something that I'm sure we can discuss later, also with some of the participants.
Can you see my screen?
No.
No, not yet. Okay.
Not yet, but we know it's the computer takes it easy.
Okay.
Something is happening now. So
yeah, I'm on the way.
Hmm?
Okay. Yeah, now?
Perfect.
Yeah, okay.
Go ahead.
I'm going to
Floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'm not going to focus on the inclusions and exclusions and the profiles of the participants. We have dedicated hopefully a very new article written together with Anastasia Tisaku about inclusions and exclusions of repair communities and libraries of things, but I would like to focus more on the impacts and effects and values that emerge from these initiatives. Just very briefly to tell you that we conducted a qualitative research based on participant observations of restart parties and libraries of tools and libraries of things. We did 3 individual interviews, not only to users and participants, but also to employees, volunteers, and organizers, but also key agents such as administration workers and representatives and third sector agents. We also conducted 4 focus groups with different profiles of participants. So I will organize the presentation along 6 axes. So the first axis is about economy, which is one of the most clear impacts of these kind of initiatives. We have selected some excerpts from the interviews. So you can see on the right side some pieces that can illustrate very well these initiatives. And I will make a kind of summary of the main impacts or main values in terms of the different topics. So in terms of economy, we can say that repair and reuse initiatives like libraries of things or repair communities are degrowth or post-growth and post-consumption practices because they try to defend the commons. If we understand that commons are the limited natural resources, so they propose more efficient ways of dealing and using these commons. They also re-signify somehow the notion of economy because they propose some caring and sufficient economies and non-monetary neighbors economy, where the sufficiency is one of the more core adjectives of these proposals. They are also pushing for the redefinition of individual property through collective sharing. and also by defending repair as a common and a kind of natural right. These initiatives have the potential to disrupt obsolescence and the trajectories of waste because they avoid to create waste or they try to reduce waste. And they also empower, as we'll see later, the consumers because they give more information or they create more informed consumers. So somehow maybe these initiatives cannot disrupt capitalism. This is maybe to ask too much to these initiatives per se, but they create some kind of resistances. So we can see how they coexist in minority with some market and consumption economy, but they create more conscious and more informed ways of consumption. There are some ambivalences and limits, like somehow they could thought as patches to the capitalist damages and ruins, because they have to face, especially repair, with the damage of a bad design or a plan obsolescence. Another ambivalence is that they save money to the users, but they demand to invest time, which it can create some kind of barriers to other type of users. And one obstacle is the market economy itself, in the sense that the outsourcing of the cost make very cheap to purchase goods instead of repair or reduce. In terms of ecology, this is also one of the more clear impacts of these initiatives. They are not, they make not a significant quantitative change at a global or planet level, but they create qualitative changes in the sense that they raise awareness about different environmental issues, and they promote some cultural changes and daily habits. But for example, in the case of repair, as you can see here, more than 50% of the objects that are brought to the restart parties were repaired. So if we extrapolate and this figure, this is also a way, this activity is a way of create awareness about the possibility, not the actuality, but the possibility of recovering objects. So another impact is the visibility of the waste problem and the consumption damage, or the damage derived from the consumption. They promote the co-responsibility, or they operate as a kind of call to co-responsibility and collective engagement around environmental global problems like waste. And they work as a kind of practical ethics because they are proposing alternative relations with objects, be them through repair or through collective reuse or communalized use of objects. So they are somehow problematizing the socio-material orders and the relationships that we maintain with things. So, but there is also a paradox in terms of the ecological impact, because they receive a limited institutional support, because when we talk with institutional representatives, they say that there is a lack of quantitative impact and the economic sustainability and long term of these initiatives. So there is a kind of problem of scalability of these initiatives. But the paradox is that it's difficult to scale up without an institutional support. And at the same time, as one representative recognized, other public services like waste management itself, it's running at loss. So yeah, so it points to a kind of paradox and kind of expectations through to these initiatives. In terms of what we talk about ontology or objects, but especially by repair, repair allows to open the black boxes of design products. So this helps to demystify technology or demystify design. So some authors, especially about repair, they talk about redesign or disobedient design or everyday design by the users. These practices also allow a very practically way of recovering objects and recovering components and recovering functions. So it's a kind of revival of the objects themselves. So if repair make objects' lives longer, we see that libraries of things multiply objects' lives because they break with the individual and private property of objects to move towards services and communalized resources and sharing resources. So they also work, and especially the repair communities, they also work as a kind of informal research and development communities, because in the case of the repair communities, they document the data about the repairs. So not probably not as a kind of actual or actual effect, but a potential effect and a potential impact is that this database that is shared among all the repair communities around the world, which is called the Fixometer, could give a very good knowledge and a very good information about about how to design better. So we see a lot of future potential impacts of these initiatives. In terms of learning and epistemology, in many cases, the learning process becomes more important than the eventual successful repair, for example, or in parallel to the sharing communities, they allow and they promote these learning processes through counseling, through workshops about how to use tools and how to use objects. So many people said that the knowledge is a way of accessing to freedom and to get more autonomy. And many people talk about how they got to lose fear to technology. And we see also how this knowledge, there is a transfer of knowledge towards new objects or new areas of repair. So the first repair moves and cheers people to expand this repair to new objects or different objects that are waiting at their homes. So they create somehow a kind of temporary collaborative learning communities, not individual formal training, but they create this informal communing of skills and knowledge. Some ambivalences or some risk is that if we treat this as a kind of individualized, individualized action, it's very close to the neoliberal ideas of self-sufficiency. Or we see also how these initiatives like repair communities, they reproduce some expertise, hierarchies, or some gender roles. In terms of sociality and community, sorry, I'm a bit out of time. They create these more than human communities because as repair communities say, they not only repair devices, but our relationship with them. So as Ulrika said, this affective affordances, it's also seen here through affective and emotional bonds with objects. So they promote these multiple scales of belongings, not only to the communities of repair or the communities of reuse, but also to the neighborhoods with different users that people know through these initiatives. Objects also operate as socio-material mediators. One user said that he said, I didn't interact with people until machines made me interact with other people. So we see how this agency of sociality is also distributed with objects. And they create this co-responsibility for the commons, as we said before. And just for finishing, some of the values that people mentioned had to do with well-being. So about the enjoyment for challenges in the case of repair and how the frustration can be a motivating motor to understand or to learn new things. They call about rebelliousness or nonconformity, resistance. Many people talk about the generosity, the pedagogical empathy, but with some difficulties also. Many people mention the idea of gratitude and how this gratitude went back to the volunteers in the times of self-esteem and well-being. And many people mention also about the proudness of being able to repair something together with other people, or the empowerment in terms of knowledge. So we see very clear a kind of cultural change and this affective engagement or an enactment of care. And one of the difficulties that was mentioned many times, as Maria Jose said before, is the difficulty to prove, to measure, to monetize, because these values are intangible somehow. But they're intangible, but all of them mention the effect and the impact of these values. So it's a kind of summary, but I'm not going to explain it because we are out of time. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Blanca. I know it's really challenging to summarize so much in very little time.
Yeah, sorry.
No, thanks so much. Thank you so much. I think it was also a great, a great complement to Ulrika's presentation that kept more on the statistics, even if the study was broader in Gothenburg. But it's quite interesting when you bring in how repairing affords similar but also different values. As you said, many other things. I'm not going to get into that. So thank you. And instead, I'm going to welcome our panelists for today. So let me introduce them again to our three discussants. These were the panelists, and we have the discussants who have kindly accepted to comment and be part of this panel. And we have a scholar, but we have also two practitioners with us. So I'm going to introduce them first, then thereafter I'm going to ask questions. So we have Claudio Cattaneo, who is a researcher with a large expertise in the growth studies from the University of Barcelona. We have Bruno Chies, who is an activist and founder of the food sharing initiative called Solidarity Fridge in Sweden, that is also expanding, but he's also a member of some repair initiatives in Gothenburg, like the Bike Kitchen, community kitchens, and many other things. And we also have with us, we have the pleasure to have Diana Guinea, who is, today he's with us with her politician hat. She is a member of the Green Party in Gothenburg, in the city of Gothenburg. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to start with like an icebreaker for the three discussants. This is challenging. In one sentence or in a few words only, what has surprised you most from these two presentations? Claudio.
Okay, thanks, Maria Jose. For me, what surprises me the most, it's the similarity of results of so very different cases we see in Gothenburg, no, between, let's say, Solidarity Fridge on one extreme, on social extreme, and the other is the toys library. No, but the right diagram shows something very similar. And the presentation from Bianca impacted me the amount of non-material values, no? Apart from economy, ecology, could be money and maybe kilograms. All the majority of values are non-material. And so the cultural impact that they can have.
Thank you so much, Claudio. That was more than one sentence, but but thank you so much for that. And now, Bruno, what do you think? What are your words or your sentence?
I'm afraid I have to put the plural sentences. Already breaking the rules. No, let me try it.
So,
I really much enjoy to see like the complementarity of all of these values, how they sort of usually add up to each other. And also the same way as Claudio pointed out, I see like a lot of similarities. I was very used to the results in Gothenburg, obviously, but now it was really nice to listen to Blanca's presentation and to see those complementarities of how they usually add up to each other, but also recognizing some tensions, people talked about, Ulrika said about the flexible identities, people coming from one reason and another. And then, there might be some tensions there, and I have that as an experience myself. But yes, no need to go further into that. Just focusing on the interplay of these different values.
Thank you very much. I also forgot to say that, Bruno, you are an activist, but you've been also part of part of this research project, which is an action research. So have also both hats. That's a common thing in this group. And now I would like to ask Diana, your work.
Okay, thank you, Maria. It's very nice to be here in this context, and as a politician, it's of great value to be able to see the results of this kind of research, because it's a very important material for us in order to let's say deploy our decisions and to shape our decisions and strategies. The reason I'm here is also because I'm also having the responsibility for the circular strategy of the city of Gothenburg in my position of chairperson of the organization who is leading this strategy. So I'm looking with this extra eyes, and as a politician, I'm reacting to slightly different things, and I also have some kind of different, let's say, wishes when it comes to results of research. And what I reacted to right now, for example, it's very nice to see the complementarity of the two presentations and the approaches, both in Gothenburg and City of Barcelona. But I was a bit surprised that, for example, to Rika's presentation, let's say the values, the non-monetary values were mostly described as the individual level. I could see the community perspective more in Blanca's research and presentation, but I would have really liked to take the step further and to bring the discussion at the next level and to speak about the values, the non-monetary values at, let's say, societal level and area levels, like more aggregated like this, beyond the individual and the small community. What are the implications of this in a larger scale? So for me, this is also a point of discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diana. We take good note of this for continuing the discussion. And now, let me continue, please, with Claudio, as you might have to leave a little bit earlier because you had a recent surgery and you were so kind to be with us. But we should not abuse of you if we really live up on to our values of caring of each other. So, as a scholar, how do we study and communicate these plural and incommensurable values without romanticizing them? I think Blanca was touching up on that a little bit, all this, how they can end up reproducing inequalities. How we can do that without taking for granted that they generate these values automatically. Because we know that there are some of these subsistence circularities that you can elaborate a little bit. That could be the food saving initiatives, for example, in Gothenburg. While other initiatives risk reproducing a little bit more these middle class norms, middle class initiatives that are run by middle class for more vulnerable groups. What do you say, Claudio?
Okay, so thanks for the very nice and interesting question, connecting maybe a very old topic in ecological economics about value pluralism and incommensurability of values with the more recent, still in progress literature and ideas related to subsistence circularities, this idea we're developing in this project. So I would say that measuring is already a problem for many of these values, even more so when you try to monetize them. And this kinds of connect, to my comment on Blanca's presentation and the non-material values. When you have non-material values, then it's already kind of difficult to quantify them. Now, can you quantify your epistemological progress, or can you quantify the community engagement you received? Now, this is already on a scale from 1 to 10. I mean, it could be already putting some answers at odds. Like kind of, why should I measure? So we have this idea of metrics, the kind of number fetishism we have in our society, which is then made even worse when the mainstream vision in decision making, influenced by economists, is that of reducing all quantifiable values into monetary ones. So it's good to see these examples because they show that there is, like, as you commented at the beginning, it's like the Gibson Graham submerged economy. So we understand the economy beyond the pure monetary value, and there is like a big diversity. So such a diverse economy, which is very well represented by the diversity of cases that we have seen. No, and it's kind of also again connected to my previous comment. No, it's incredible to see how different social groups converge, no, into similar values, as in the radar diagram. No, the Gothenburg case is interesting because you have different practitioners. So yeah, it is true that you have this kind of risk of romanticizing the non-monetary value of, yes, I go to the toy library because, no, it's not because I miss the money. No, like we all work, and we also like upper income. No, so the community kitchen people work, but they have a lower income on average. No, the toy library is kind of almost a risk that they do it to clean your conscience. No, so it could start, no, as something like, okay, I'm a bit skeptical of how maybe these people might join these environmental initiatives because it's a good way to say, hey, it's nice to be environmentally friendly. And when in reality, perhaps their extended lifestyle, because I mean, you have a big income, you will do something with your income. No, you will spend it somewhere. And so wherever you spend something, you have an environmental impact at the end of the day. But then I think, I mean, it was comforting to see this radar diagram because, no, also in the toys library, no, the values, no, the most prominent values are similar to the participants to the community fridge, no, which is the other extreme of really people who don't even have a job, unemployed, or people with a government allowance who do it for the money. So yeah, let's say that, no, apart from this initial risk that for certain middle class is kind of a lifestyle environmentalism, the deeper values are common, no, because after all, we are humans. No, and this is my learning from the Gothenburg case, no, the diversity of the humans there converge, no, to similar values. And this connects also to how wrong, no, is the economic model, no, with this idea of the homo economicus, no, which is like the model that is used to represent reality when it is a very partial aspect of reality. No, we are selfish. Yes, we are selfish. No, when I can imagine when I don't go to the carpet market, but the idea of going to a Turkish bazaar and you start, no, try to put the price down of the seller because the sellers ask for a price too high. No, you are kind of selfish. You want to pay the least, yes, but you know, and we learn from Polanyi. No, this is not the only part of our interactions, not with other persons. We just don't do it for our selfish interest. And this is the big wrong thing in monetary valuation, which is based on neoclassical economics assumption of selfishness, which is only a part of the story, and we are much more complex than that. No, and since we are more complex, we have many more values. No, and this is when I think it's very nice to see Blanca's representation of values. No, because they also I saw very interesting also how they are connected to each other. Now, for instance, in Bike Kitchen, now there is this idea of going beyond the do-it-yourself. And it's the one, because you go to a bike kitchen or maybe repairing cafe, you don't know how to fix something, but the person there tells you how to do it. No, so you do it together. Now you move beyond the do-it-yourself and you enter into a social dimension of this autonomy. So it becomes a collective autonomy. So also this is mind-blowing because in neoclassical economics, now there is the selfish individual, and from the individual you have the market, and eventually perhaps then you have the state. No, but we learn from Kate Raworth, no, in her really nice book on donut economics, no, that the real economy has also families, has society, has human relationships at the core, at the center. No, and again, it's a plurality of persons with a plurality of values, and none of them needs to be quantified or measured. It's more of a relational. No, it's more of a not a mechanic approach, no, which is like a market mechanism, again, paraphrasing Kate Raworth, but it's more of an organic, no, a collective, a complex reality that we face here. So again, and again, here is in Blanca's presentation, I would like to highlight also this point. Not maybe the quantifiable in kilograms, no, from the ecology perspective, perhaps no, the impact is not so much, but the potential for a cultural change, no, also from your epistemological possibility to believe that you can fix something. So this is the great contribution, and again, cannot be measured, not in monetary terms, not in kilograms because it's very little, but is a seed of hope that we really need new seeds, new ideas, new imaginaries, because we are in a big crisis and we need to be very diverse, no, and spread like Fukuoka, no, these seed bombs. We have to throw many seeds, and some of them only will flourish. But this is what we want: some new flowers. And I leave it.
Thank you. You leave us, yeah, with a beautiful metaphor here. And I'm sure that we get many different thoughts from that. I got one of the first ones for me is this convergence of from convergence spaces where people share these deep values. And I think it's particularly relevant in times like where we live right now, in extreme polarization of societies, where we can find those spaces where people with different life courses can meet. So that it's one of these, it is very big appeal of these initiatives. As Ulrika was also mentioning, there's flexible identities that are able to attract many different groups. But it's not my role to comment, but to continue and giving the word to our discussants. And I'm going to ask Bruno now, as an activist, from your lived experience, even as an actual researcher, which has been part of this group as well, we have very blurred roles in this group. Blanca is an activist, she's also a researcher, etc. So, Bruno, for you, what changes in people and in their surrounding societies, as Diana was asking for, like what happens beyond when we participate in these initiatives? And double question, why do you think those changes cannot be produced by markets or by local states alone?
Yes, thank you. It's a very nice question, and I will continue in the same line of reasoning, I think, that Claudio, was talking about. These unmeasurable, I would even say, cultural changes. We saw there's a lot about empowerment, the feeling of agency, but there's also there's this plurality of values that attract people to this kind of initiatives. Maybe even some are playing that consumer role when joining one of these activities. They maybe are just interested in the material value of the thing that is being offered, which is maybe just food, or they cannot afford a new phone, so they look for repair to it. But nonetheless, they might get stuck there for something else. They might get stuck for the company, or just the feeling of empowerment, knowledge. Okay, now I know how to fix this. I just met this really nice person in the queue to the food handouts. This seems to be nice people. So regarding this question of leaving, what can be offered beyond the market and the state, I think it just puts people into a different role, even though they might come with these preconceived notions or what they're used to. They go to the market, they act almost like this value profit maximizing individuals that the neoclassical theory tells us that we are. They might act like that in certain contexts, but then you give a new context to this person. You frame the situation completely different, and they get something. They might even get something material that is to their personal advantage, but then they will have to relate to the community, to the people providing that, and see that the rationale is completely different. They say like, no, we don't want any money from you. No, we're doing this because we want to reduce our ecological footprint. They're faced with different. If they join as a volunteer, then they don't need to obey to the laws or to a certain state bureaucracy. No, they have agency. You know, there may be some certain rules that are defined by the community, but then they need to learn how to relate to that, to each other, how to negotiate a lot of times. There might be tensions and conflicts within the community, you know, and this is a part of the democratic learning process, which we basically lost completely in this hyper-consumerist society and this, you know, I would even say, with the risk of sounding like a liberal, paternalistic state, you know, that people are just, you know, following rules, obeying blindly and unquestioned. Okay, this is how it works, and this is how I should behave. No, as soon as you get there, it sort of opens up like a new dimension. Now you have to relate to people, and you can have a lot of fun. You can also create dramas. There's a lot of drama in this community initiatives, which can be quite fun also in a way. It's quite an amazing journey and learning process that I have it, you know, gone through myself in my own experience, and everybody like who joins these types of community initiatives. So you learn how to relate to this plurality of values, and you have the material value, and you might gain something material from it for yourself, you know. You act selfish, you act altruistically as well. So I think that's what the most important contribution, or the most important difference in terms of, you know, community economies compared to, you know, like market settings that you act as a consumer, or even the state that you act as a, they don't even call a citizen anymore, they call you like a client, you know, in many welfare states, which is also just copying in the paradigm of the market. So maybe there's something to be learned here from this kind of community initiatives to sort of reshape new markets even, and new states and new municipalities and political forums. Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing all these thoughts, Bruno. I was thinking when you were talking about Chantal Mouffe and talking about this agonistic pluralism, and how sometimes we misunderstand when communities talk and agree about what things to do, and the natural conflicts that comes out of that because of this diversity of people meeting with an immatureness or lack of or organization. But indeed, it's a manifestation of these democratic values that are in practice. It's quite difficult to do this in practice, as you're saying. And now I would like to move and make a transition towards, you mentioned about local governments, and that we are not customers, but whether we are citizens or so because we have Diana with us, and I think many local governments are addressing all these issues of urban just transitions, climate transitions, how civil society is contributing with preparedness and democracy, etc. But the truth is that what research shows is that many of these grassroots initiatives are very invisible because of their very nature for politicians and officers, so it's quite challenging. So, Diana, I have a question somewhere here for you. As a local politician, I think it's a double question, so you can choose whether you want to answer. As a politician, what have you learned about the diversity values resulting from their different practices and its implications for these local socio-ecological transformations? And then the other question is, if we accept that these initiatives create all these values that are difficult to reduce to money, how can public policy recognize and support them without reducing them to cost efficiency metrics or instrumentalizing them? This is a very difficult question. But let's start.
Thank you, Maria. It's a big question. So we have an extra half an hour. So I think I would like to start with your second question, and because it's easier for me to bridge it to what the previous speakers were saying, like Claudio and Bruno, and then I will go to the second question, which is the first part of your question. And I'm thinking like this, as a politician at the local level, we are bound to accountability. It's very important for us because especially at this level, you have to be able to see if the kind of policy measure that you are supporting and you are taking, if they make a difference in somehow for your local level, and then how you see that. And I think the problem here and the trap here is that since cities and municipalities and politicians as well are, of course, bound to budget, this is shaping the logic of accountability as well. And I think the trap here is that we are trapped in the notions like efficiency instead of actually looking at the effectiveness of what we are trying to do. And this is the problem. It's not only the problem which is connected to measuring it itself that is like fundamentally or entirely wrong measuring, but it is how do we understand measuring. And if we don't understand measuring as more than efficiency and more to effectiveness, then we end up in this kind of like faulting logic. I would also like to to pose like a challenge to you as researchers, because you are very important for us since you are giving us the ground and the data for our like policy decision. It would be very nice to see if the research can look of different kind of, let's say, measurements or metrics for this kind of actions. And I would like to draw a parallel, for example, to the index of perception that is being used by Transparency International for measuring like corruption at the society level. What if we could devise a different kind of metrics for other things than corruption? Maybe we should have like a more value on the perception, because perception of our citizen, it's a very important tool. It's a very important way of actually understanding what works and doesn't work. From a policy perspective. So I think it would be very nice to see that. If I build on this further, because I was saying before, what surprised me is that what we see is also the positive effect at the individual level, and then we see a bit at the community level with Blanca's very nice like structuring with the learning and mature and all the other aspects. But I'm also thinking that we have the societal infrastructure that we don't talk about, and these kind of like movements are creating. And this is like answering to your first question secondly, and what was Bruno saying, because all these interactions and agency, in the end, they are creating an infrastructure that can be used also in other situations, like you mentioned, Maria, when it comes to preparedness and so how do we make this kind of social infrastructure that is thus created more visible? And then we have to talk about it. We have to also learn how to lift this instead of lifting the other aspects. And it's also, this is very connected to the two different dimensions of sustainability that we are talking about. Normally, circularity, we speak about the environmental sustainability, but we shouldn't forget the social sustainability aspect, which can be both at the individual level, which was in Ulrika's presentation also, but also a larger scale. So have to give more place to these aspects in our reports, for example, in what we as politicians can require from the public servants in this kind of monitoring situation and likewise. So yes, this is what I wanted to say. If you have questions, I can answer.
Thank you so much, Diana. That was a really great contribution. I'm sure my colleagues would like to react. I'm very happy that you brought the question of efficacy versus effectiveness, and the fact that we take for granted that performance management must it predominates to democratic value creation. And they are here, I mean, we will have a webinar dedicated to governance, but we can already think about terms like Mark Moore's concept of public value, arguing that public institutions should create value as defined through democratic processes, not merely efficiency. So, yeah, there's quite a lot to discuss about that, but I see that Ulrika raised her hand, so please.
Yes, just a short comment to the important question that Diana raised. When you move from the non-monetary measurements and looking at our survey, is it mostly personal values that we highlight? I would say, well, they of course have a personal part of it, but they are not selfish, because most of them, even if they have a personal dimension, they are directed to more social groups or for the community or the society. So, for example, what we call social capital, for example, it's the enjoyment of being there with others. Of course, you can feel it personally, and it's a good value for yourself, but it also creates a great community. So in many of these dimensions, we have these both sides of understanding and feeling that you do something for the environment, and you're feeling more hopeful for the climate, etc. So it's both for yourself and for others.
Diana?
Yes, thank you for this, Ulrika. Absolutely, that was not my intention to minimize the importance of the individual values. I think they are fundamental. It's very important because of the motivational engagement at the local level. What I wanted to draw the attention to is that it's even have the other values that are going beyond this. And I'm looking, for example, where we're looking now, what is the effect, what do you see the result of these movements in the areas where we have the solidarity fridge, when you have the Leksaksbibliotekers, because what we can see, and we know, it's also like you see an increased sense of safety in this area, a different kind of interactions. And these are also important aspects that we need to lift. And that's why I mentioned also the perception index, that we can have this perception index for saying how the whole area is transforming just because you create the prerequisite and you allowed for this kind of movements and organizations.
Thank you, Diana. Blanca?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something to connect Diana's and Claudio's contributions. In terms, I like a lot the distinction that you make and the reminder between efficiency and effectiveness, because I think that it's crucial for the analysis of these initiatives. We analyze the ratio of devices repaired per hour in these grassroots initiatives compared to the institutional initiatives that are also dedicated to repair. And even the efficiency is much, much, much higher, like 3 times more. I think that the figures are in this paper that we are in the process of publication, but at the same time, it was a bit risky because, wow, but we don't want to put on risk to an institutional initiative that it's focused on repair, because we think that it's necessary to create an ecosystem that is institutional, not institutional, and different for different profiles of people. But just to say that even in terms of efficiency, it's super efficient, these kind of initiatives. And in terms of effectiveness, I like a lot that you raise the notion of the perception, because the qualitative research is basically based on the experiences of the people, the perception of the people. And I think that we should try to include or expand our notion of change or our notion of transformation, not as a kind of, wow, big impact in terms of global impact, because at the end, this global impact is a sum, an accumulation of life's impact. And if we trace the small transformations that people narrate in the interviews and in the focus groups, there are many, many transformations, like how to measure when people say, I lose fear. But we have a pre and post measure somehow, no? So I agree with you that we need to focus on these multiple perceptions of multiple transformations of fear, of root on the neighborhood, of trustness in the other, and yeah, and or even in individual, like, okay, I feel that I'm more useful to others now, no? So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for this. And now it's like 20 minutes until the end of this webinar, and I understand some people might be disappearing because it's complicated, but we have time for questions, and we already have one in the chat, a couple of them actually. I don't know, Rakendu, if you would like to ask the question yourself. I'm not sure if you are still among us, or I should do it.
Hello.
Yes?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you for the wonderful presentations. And my question is, anybody can answer this. So I was wondering if we apply these kind of initiatives in very highly unequal societies where, participation is much more shaped by structural constraint rather than by choice, then in that case, how do we ensure that circularity does not really become a mark, like a moral thing for or lifestyle distinction for the privileged? Because coming from the global south, I see here that it's mostly necessity driven circular practices that is already existing among the less advantaged groups here. So the repair economy or the recycling economy that's majorly run here are by people from very marginalized sections of the society. And we can see very privileged upper class people having this moral, sustainable lifestyle being preached. So how do we address that is my question. Yeah.
Thank you very much. This was a very, very important question to contextualize. And our colleagues have been developing this concept of subsistence circularity. It's very much along the lines of what you are mentioning, that even also in the global north, we might also see how some of these initiatives reproduce the existing inequalities. But I don't know if any of our speakers would like to show up. But otherwise, I would redirect this question to start with to Bruno, because your food sharing initiative has been very much consciously framing the initiative as an environmental act rather than a philanthropy action. Can you elaborate on that? Because it seems relevant to what Rakendu is asking.
Yeah, so even here in Sweden, as strange as it might sound, there is food poverty. There are people who cannot afford, definitely not the same levels as in the global south, but there are people in need, and they come to our initiative to alleviate their situation, economic situation. But the way we frame it is because we started as an environmentally minded organization. So our aim is to reduce food waste and to open people's eyes to the issue of how much food is wasted. And in a sense that it's kind of facilitating for the people who are in need, because it's not the basic charity-based kind of organization, which is usually connected to churches. And there's the whole stigma of people, coming to us or coming to any charity-based organizations and asking, please. We try to change it in a little bit more empowering way of saying, like, if you take the food from us, we thank you. You don't need to thank us, because you are doing the environmental service. You're caring for the rest of society and the environment. So thank you. So by switching, I think it's a good way to show that we can strive for sufficiency in a sense and show this absurd of there is so much food waste on one hand and so much food poverty on the other, to show the inequality and then the injustice of the whole system or how it works. So I think we can sort of bridge that quite well here with this particular initiative, not without its challenges, because we usually, some places fall back into the, it depends on how you distribute the food, how you communicate, and all of that, because it's quite easy for some places, some handouts to fall back into the typical charity kind of model, because the same people who are in need will come back to it. But we also try to reach out, passerbys, like just, as an eye opener, look, please save this food. And they go like, okay, but maybe someone in need needs this. And then we reply, okay, not really, because we have like a whole pallet of this, and if you don't save this now, it will be thrown away. And then people are like more, okay, yes, okay, I can take this. So I think there is a good potential there to sort of bridge the gap in unequal societies. And by now, there's just, even Sweden is quite unequal. And societies in the global south are very unequal. So what we need to sort of keep alive is some kind of politicization of the issue of, like whether we are talking about food waste or whatever, to show there is this outrageous material inequality of some people have a lot of access to a lot of material abundance. And I'm just talking about money, when we save the food as a collective, we might not have a lot of money, but we have this material abundance. So some people have a lot of material abundance, access to it, and some people don't. So how do we bridge this gap and, say like, okay, the people who are really well off and have this material abundance, they should, start reflecting. I'm in favor of, like lifestyle, environmentalism, or, kind of thing, to show that, okay, if you are privileged, you can do something about it. And then you can connect in a way to the people who are not as privileged. So that's the way I go by thinking about this this issue. But it's quite tricky and challenging.
Thank you very much, Bruno, for sharing with us your experience. I have in the chat, you can find an article that we have recently published where we also discuss the case of this food sharing initiative in Gothenburg and how it frames food sharing as an environmental initiative in contradistinction to church organizations, for example, that do it as a philanthropic activity. And then it has very different impacts. Rather than pacifying people, it's empowering people. But then again, we cannot romanticize, as you were saying, how things are happening in practice, because we can see that different hubs of this solidarity fridge might be performed in different way, and some of them could even follow into replicating similar patterns, right? So we are also into publishing a book chapter about food waste, and also being critical about how these initiatives, regardless good or bad intentions or framings, they are not bad intentions, can become a stopgap, because there still is a partial solution that we are providing to an unequal global food system. So if what we have discussed in our project in the different cities is that we need to, while also doing what we do in this circular initiative, saving, reusing things, we also need to work with discourses and denouncing the inequalities of the systems we want to change, because otherwise we become only stopgaps of the system. We can be instrumentalized by them. So that was one way to go. We had another question here. Roberto Viviani. Would you like, I'm not sure if you're still with us, would you like to ask your question, or any other people who would like to raise hands?
Yes, I am. And
please go ahead.
first of all, thank you really for this very interesting and useful webinar. And yes, I was wondering, because I also studying right now some grassroots group, but related more to the service management, specifically a sports association that it's related to a social squad. And I'm going to analyze them with trying to use the social life cycle assessment. So I don't know if some of the researchers that are here think about it, if they think that it's too new, too young, and has too much limitation. But because I have a sort of fear that this kind of tool and theory for the evaluation of the social aspect could be adopted and used instrumentally to achieve a sort of social washing. So I want to act and try to use them. Of course, everybody needs some theoretical lens because it's not a neutral tool. But I was wondering if someone here thinks about use it. Thank you.
Thank you much, Roberto, for sharing this. While I'm also looking into my colleagues and seeing if some of you would like to say something, maybe our colleagues working with urban metabolism might be a little bit more into that. We could think about that. I can reflect about the fact that at the beginning of our research project, we considered doing, instead of the survey that you have seen that Ulrika has presented about the perceived values, we were considered to follow the work of I think it's Ioana Petrescu. She's into these alternative economies. She's working at the University of Paris, I think. And Petrescu has been elaborating a methodology for making a calculation of the monetary value of the diversity of values that are created. And initially, I remember in our first meeting that we discussed this possibility, and Bruno himself, who is part of the research, we were looking into that. But at the end of the day, we concluded that it's a risk when we reduce intangible values into money. So because what we were discussing before, like what kind of other values are crowded out and what happens when we're using then those arguments and what things are reduced if we are playing the game when we are reducing this into a monetary value. So this is why we decided to not continue that particular way. With that said, our colleagues, Claudio, Jean-Baptiste, that is also here, they have recently submitted an article about the metabolic contributions of some of these initiatives, like waste pickers in Barcelona or food cleansers in Gothenburg and Nantes. And it's quite interesting because even if sometimes we discuss that they have only a symbolic contribution, when we start measuring in terms of material recoveries, it seems like they make a much more significant contribution than what we think, some of them. So in the case of Barcelona, it is like 1/3 of these metals, materials that are recovered. And even when it comes to the foods that is saved, I think it was an estimation between 15 and 20% of the food that is saved by this initiative. So it's quite high. I don't think this is answering your question, but we're very happy to continue these conversations. We would love to have an exchange about this. I know Diana has also been intrigued and having these discussions. Yes, we still have a few minutes left. I wonder if you still have some questions or things we would like to discuss or remark. Jean-Baptiste?
Yeah, thank you very much. That's very interesting. Just an alternative question. We didn't talk about that much, but I was wondering if participants and users were becoming a little bit more politicized and maybe anti-capitalist with the participation of these grassroots, or maybe they were already politicized. So, question regarding that. Maybe something also regarding the values of anti-far right. Is it something you meet, you mention, you discuss with participants, or it's not a subject? I was wondering, maybe you do, maybe you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. maybe some of our presenters would like to.
Yeah. In fact, there is the perception narrated by the participants and the users. There is a perception that is a kind of prejudice that these kind of initiatives, especially to libraries and library of tools, like something for hippie people and like progressive people, like left wing ideology, let's say, which is kind of real. I mean, we didn't ask directly about the ideology of people, but many of them, identify themselves as, kind of conscious people, very aware about the environmental and collective issues. So, but maybe in the case of repair, it's not so clear. Maybe, or we can find a distinction between organizers and the users, because maybe most of organizers are, like activist profile of people and very conscious, and very left ideology, but the users not necessarily. And in fact, in the interviews, several people mentioned that you can come here and say almost anything, not anything against anybody, but it's a kind of safe place where you can talk and share about people. And for example, I remember one repair that said, well, I don't go on the street just talking to people about ecology and society, but just sitting down together next to one person, and while we are trying to repair the device, we indirectly talk about these kind of issues. So in the case of repair, maybe it's not so clear for participants. In the case of libraries of things, they are kind of middle, low class, and kind of leftish. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Blanca. We see that there are many nuances between the different initiatives that bring very different values. Also, previous literature shows, as you were saying, that environmental values, ideologies might be stronger for those who have a more prominent role in organizing, while users have other interests. And this is what makes these movements great, because they can grow, they can reach many different rationales.
Yeah.
But we are reaching the end. It's only 1 minute to 5, and I see that it's time to end. I'm gonna thank you, everybody. And before I say bye-bye, I would like to remind you that we have a fourth webinar that will be, if I don't remember wrongly, it will be the 21st of March, and it will be about this connection between local governments and grassroots initiatives, because even if you are very frugal and simple, still there are things that need to be accessed, like space, permits, sometimes to act, etc. So, okay, how to make all these values grow in many different ways. So, hope seeing many of you.
It's the 23rd,
23rd
March at 12.
Yeah, thank you very much. I knew it was always mixing dates.
It's also in the information in the chat.
Excellent. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here, particularly to the panelists and the presenters. It has been really rich, and we have learned, and we will continue learning more. Thanks to all colleagues and new colleagues and everybody. Have a good one. Be good.
Thank you for organizing.
Thank you, guys, for very interesting discussions.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
See you in the next one.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.